exciting presentation from Luis Salvidia of DEQ and Jeffrey Fritzma of U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And
thank you, everyone. My name is Luis Saldivia. I am the district supervisor of the Grand Rapids District Office of the Department of Environmental Quality, Grand Rapids. What we're going to do here tonight, by the way, it's going to be a hard act to follow. What Mark and Keith did, excellent presentation. So. The upside is we're going to be briefer than that, so we'll have a chance to have a lot of time to some additional questions to Mark, Keith, or Jeff, and I. So, again, with me tonight is
Jeff Fritzma of the Corps of Engineers out of Grand Haven. I know a lot of you guys, deal with you guys, and if you have questions, feel free to contact me or talk to me later. We'll get going on this.
As the topic is Great Lakes Water Levels 101, both the Department of Environmental Quality and the Army Corps, we do have joint regulatory jurisdiction over the Great Lakes. The topics that we're going to be covering are what types of permits are needed, what types of most common projects you'll encounter, and what the typical processing of those permit applications are. And we'll go through a variety of projects that we encounter on a day-to-day basis. The regulatory scheme in the state of Michigan, as far as the work on the Great Lakes, is basically controlled under two different statutes. The Great Lakes Submerged Lands Act, that's Part 325. I give you the site there. And in those areas that we have on Great Lakes exposed bottomlands, that we have wetlands, then the Wetland Protection Act will come into play as well.
And the Corps of Engineers has jurisdiction in these areas under Section 10 of the Rivers and Harbors Act and Section 404 of the Clean Water Act. Did you? No, I bet.
You got it?
Yep, we're good. So the jurisdiction boundaries for the Corps and for the DEQ. The DEQ uses an elevation, a set elevation by statute of 580.5 IGLD 1985 for Lake Michigan. And the Corps of Engineers, the only way we can truly determine the ordinary high water mark is through a site visit. And all the characteristics, the physical characteristics on the shoreline is the way that we determine the ordinary high water mark. It is closely represented by the elevation of 581.5 IGLD 85, so we're approximately a foot higher from the state. Drop back one slide. You can see here we've got we'll say it's a great year because it's above the water level is above the ordinary high water mark for the DEQ, and the ordinary high water mark for the Corps is a little bit higher. We would have jurisdiction to the far red line, and the state elevation would be just a little bit. They would move back to approximately that point, correct?
Yes.
And so go forward one. Oh, wrong way, the top button. There, one more. Now we've got the water levels drop, and you can see the current water levels are below the ordinary high water mark. So the good thing for the regulated public is the elevation does not change, the ordinary high water mark does not change, if you're still working from the ordinary high water mark out to the middle of the lake, you're going to require a permit from the Corps. And that elevation for the state is now set by statute at 580.5 IGLD. It's that stagnant line on the shoreline that will require any work waterward of those two marks will require a permit from one or both agencies.
Most typical projects that we're going to see coming through for permits are dredging, and again, this year, the last 3 years have been a significant amount of applications coming into both agencies for that type of work. Filling below the ordinary high, again, any type of construction activities. And for our area, obviously we have a significant amount of marinas that have to do some construction work. So here's, just to give you an idea, some of the most typical projects. Again, we will see during this 2013 year a significant amount of the applications coming in for this 3 or 4 types of projects that we just discussed. Another type of project that will see a significant amount of work is shore protection. Shore protection takes a number of different construction techniques, but by and large, when the Great Lakes are low, as we see it today, the number of applications for shore protection tends to drop. And back in the 80s and the 90s, when we saw higher water levels, that was a flip coin with respect to dredging. Very little dredging applications and a significant amount of projects come in for shore protection.
Yeah, the other permit criteria is marinas. All marinas require permits from us. Some of you in here today know that you got to deal with both agencies here. So seasonal structures require a permit from the Corps. The DEQ, for this one, it is a marina. Even though they're seasonal structures, they do require a permit for this. And I do want to state, too, from the previous slide, it is one application for both agencies with 2 separate permits. So it's one application with 2 permits.
Yeah, going into a little bit of the work that we are seeing back in, let's go back here for a second. In 2009, the state legislature put into play here in Michigan a 3-tier permit process. What that 3-tier permit process did was to basically tailor the state of Michigan permit process closely as to what the Corps of Engineers has been doing for many years, which is we created some general permit types projects. We call them GPs. They're simple, they can be desktop by and large. Another set of, the second tier was a little more complicated projects. We call them minor permits, MPs. We broadened that number from a handful before 2009. Now we have upwards of 50 types of minor project categories that we can fit a project in. And the third tier is if we cannot fit a project into one of the general permits or one of the minor permits, we'll go with the individual permit process. What we at the state have continued to do since 2009 is to refine that process In July of 2012, both the Great Lakes Submerged Lands Act and the Wetland Protection Act were further amended to create another set of exemptions in categories for work below the ordinary high of the Great Lakes, work between the ordinary high and the water's edge. So certain activities were deemed to be exempt. For example, this is one that passed last year in areas of unconsolidated material, predominantly, and here's the key, the area composed of sand, rock, or pebbles, that an area under normal circumstances where vegetation does not exist, then a permit from the DEQ is not required, as well as a permit from the Corps of Engineers for mowing of that area between the ordinary high and the water's edge. Leveling of sand, again, unconsolidated areas, very little sparse vegetation, is not regulated by the state.
That will require a permit from the Corps.
Removal of vegetation is another area that the state went in 2012. And again, de minimis, hand pulling, shallow tilling of very sparsely vegetated areas, again, between the ordinary high and the water's edge. The state of Michigan, the DEQ, a permit is not required.
That would require a permit from the Corps.
However, for both agencies, the last bullet here, grooming of sands or pebbles, a permit is still required for both agencies on that. As Jeff indicated, through our process, you still need a permit in most instances, one from the state of Michigan to fulfill the statutory requirements, and one also for from the Corps of Engineers. Same application, but two permits have to be obtained. We do close coordination between the two agencies, so it's not an issue. For example, if an application is submitted to my office, we readily share that with the Army Corps, and if the Army Corps receives an application, they share it with the DEQ. Here's an update as we continue to refine that process. Matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, the governor signed into legislation further amendments to the statutes that deal with our land and water interface processes, and these have to deal with the dredging issues that we're faced over the last few years. The legislature passed into law a number of amendments where we're trying to facilitate for those dredging projects that truly need to come in. As you see in the slides that Keith and Mark presented, a significant amount of access to marinas, navigation channels, etc. So just 2 weeks ago, recently, further amendments were passed trying to facilitate that process. Here, briefly, one application, two permit processes. We have a set fees for most general permits are $50. Most minor projects are usually $100. And for an individual permit that needs to be obtained, the fees can vary from $500 for a very significant one to up to $2,000.
Well, with that said, now we're to the Corps, and our general applications, our general permits, there's no fee. So there's a good point. Our letter of permission, which is a project that has a little bit larger impact, but it's primarily just Section 10 impacts, a large deck structure, a dock structure, or a significant dredging project. Larger than our minor category is a letter of permission. It has, there's no fee for that. A standard permit, which refers to the permit type and not to the applicant, has a 30-day public notice period. There's a full-blown EA completed on the project. That permit, there is a $10 fee for an individual. There's a $100 fee for a commercial entity, and government to government, there's no fee. And then with a standard permit or the individual permit, if we do not issue a permit, there is no fee from the Corps. So another nice aspect for the applicant. It's not an application fee, it's a permit fee. So we've got the permit application flowchart here, which actually shows you the process that we have to go through when we evaluate your application. The pre-application meeting is a completely optional meeting that you can request as an applicant. There is no fee from the Corps. You can sit down with us, show us your project. We can discuss avenues or points of concern that we have, but it's your project, and you can bring that to us and just ask us if it'll qualify for a general permit. We can meet you at your site, we can meet over the phone, we can meet in my office, whichever works best for you guys. That application, like I said, there's no fee from us. After we get a complete application from you, then we go into our evaluation and coordination. If we have to do a letter of permission, we coordinate with the agencies, we coordinate with the DEQ, and we complete our evaluation of your project. After our evaluation is complete, then we do the permit decision, and in most cases, the permits are issued. There are rare cases where permits are denied.
The DEQ's approximate timeframes, and here's the key. When we receive an application, we will have the agencies will have 30 days to make an initial evaluation of the application. As soon as that application is reviewed and deemed complete, then there's a clock, so to speak, that begins. Most projects on the Great Lakes, under the Great Lakes Submerged Lands Act or the Wetland Protection Act, have a statutory requirement that the agency must make a decision within 90 days. Mind you that the 90 days includes, and I'm talking about significant projects, it more than likely include the issuance of a public notice, which we are required by law to do in certain projects. We have to wait for a 20-day time frame. And in some instances, and again, from time to time, interested folks, the public, can make a request for a public hearing. So we have to account for all those factors, and we have about 90 days to make that decision. For the other two categories we discussed a little bit earlier, minor projects, general permits, again, those are much more simpler. Some of them are reissuances in most instances, and those can be completed in a much faster time frame.
And with that regards, the general permits, the regionals, or the nationwides from the Corps of Engineers, we strive to do them within 60 days. As you can see, 92% of our permits were completed in under 60 days. I believe the average was approximately 40 days. So it's not, and that's from a complete application. So it's once we receive all the information we need to get from you to complete the application. We've got our individual permits. We have 120 days to do them. And those are the larger projects, the full EAs, the full assessment that we have to complete on them. And 70% of them are done within the 120-day average.
Lastly, I want to share with you a land and water interface permitting staff map. And if you come in, there's copies on the table. It's a little bit hard to read here, but the Grand Rapids District, which is where I'm from, for the coastal counties, we have Ottawa, Muskegon, and Oceana, and then we cover the rest of the counties inland.
And for myself and the Corps of Engineers, I'm out of the Grand Haven office. As you can see, I go all the way up to Traverse City, Leelanau. So I got a pretty big area. I do spend time in the field. So if you do want to talk to me, if you come in, you may find me, you may not. Okay, so please give me a call. If you want to set up a pre-application meeting, set it up, come on in.